Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean right here on the Rock Region Radio Network. Not brought to you by Tama, but brought to you by Mapex. I didn't tell you, Gil, I'm a player too. And I will tell you, one of my heroes, I feel like I owe you some money for ripping off licks over the years. There's no question. The one and only Mr. Gil Moore. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, Sean. Nice to be here.
Yeah, all the way from, I'm guessing, the Toronto area, correct?
Yeah, I'm here in MetalWorks Studios, which is just in Mississauga, the city right beside Toronto.
I was there once. I lived in Toronto for 7 years. I was in Metalworks once, and I touched the wall, and I was very polite and all that stuff. So it was great.
Bet.
All things Triumph the last couple of weeks. For starters, congrats on the Magic Power trilogy. We'll call it. That's absolutely incredible. I showed you the drum kit that Dorothea Taylor put up, and then another thing showed up, Mr. Moore, that I ordered. It came in the mail today.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That's the heavy vinyl
Yep,
reissue, right?
it's the probably one of my all-time favorite albums. Period. So you guys have been busy. I mean, it's just you do the hockey night in Canada thing a couple of weeks ago. This album is out. How are you keeping up? Because you're still trying to run a business too, right?
Well, businesses here at Metalworks, like there's great people running them, so I'm not running them. They're just this is where I hang out, and I have I have input into everything that's going on, of course, and I love it because it's all music. So one way or the other, or whether it's, our AV company or studios or school or the charity that I'm now working on, Sounds Unite Canada, is probably where I spend most of my time working on that, which is free music education for kids. But yeah, it's a great place to hang out. There's all musicians coming and going all the time, and what's wrong with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm coming to you from Halifax. So Triumph has a lot of history in Halifax. I was at both the shows that you guys did here. Funny story, my longtime bass player, we went tobogganing New Year's Eve and he broke his ankle. And I think that concert was January 6th of 87. We had to carry him into the rink because he had a busted ankle. But that was the one that you can still see on there. It's still on YouTube, that Much Music shot. What do you remember about those shows when you did them? I just remember they were huge.
Well, I mean, the Metro Center Arena is a good venue, and the fans in Halifax are great. All through Eastern Canada, great fans. And when you know that you're doing a video, which we did that night, I guess it just puts everybody, put their game face on because they know it's all being recorded, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Strangely enough, the this is a funny anecdote. The first three songs, or the first two songs, I'm not sure which, the recording engineer at the time finished the show, rewound the tape, and the first two songs were missing.
Oh,
And he had a new assistant that was local. And so anyhow, we're out at game two in Edmonton, getting ready for that show. And the guy that's running he's a buddy of mine that runs Livewire remote recorders, Doug McClement. And he's there and he's recording our performance for the game. And so we had a chance to chat in the airport. We happened to be on the same flight. I forget if it's coming back from Edmonton, I think. And he said, "Do you remember when we were in Halifax?" He said, but he forgot to push record or whatever, or somehow managed to erase the first two tracks. So I was joking with him and I said, "Yeah, sure do remember that. Yeah." We
incredible.
had to pull two other live shows. I think it was Detroit and Fort Wayne, I think were the two shows we pulled, and had to put the audio in there and try and match it up.
It's funny because I see a lot of people that I knew in some of those shots that were in the front row, and some of those girls still look great today, and some of them not so much, but they were there. They're immortalized forever, right? It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, so tell me about this record. Obviously, it doesn't. You don't get a call one day. The great Mike Klink did it, but I mean, it was obviously some in the works. But you got to be over the moon because I will tell you, I 70% of my audience is from the United States. And I always like to do the tell me Canadian, what you know about Canadian music. Everybody remembers Triumph. They always bring Triumph up. And the second thing when they talk about Triumph is how you guys own the US Festival. and everybody talks about how you guys play in there with no lights. It was just in the daytime, and you were relying on your musicianship and your vocals and those types of things. Must be very satisfying to see this thing come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you ever expect. When you're starting out, the main thing you're trying to do is just not get fired. You
Fair
don't think
enough.
about winning awards or, tribute albums or gold albums. It's just enough to play at Joe's Bar and not get kicked out. So as time progresses, and you're lucky enough to have a successful band, which most are not, like, 99.999% of bands, fail for one reason or another. And, Mike's bands, my bands, Rick's bands, the ones we had are, kid bands or whatever, none of them ever went anywhere. So when the Magic Carpet Ride started with Triumph, it was pretty much magic. And this tribute album thing is just another part of that magic where you just go, I can't imagine. Like I feel like we should record a tribute album to every one of those musicians and singers. They're all phenomenal in their own right. They have huge careers. They don't need to do this for us. It's very humbling that they would do this. All the credit, I think, goes besides the players and so on, though, really goes to Michael Klink. Mike Klink is the probably the best hard rock, producer of them all, and with the biggest reputation and credibility with people. So I think a lot of people, when they got the call from Mike Klink and they realized he was putting this together, and there was his relationship that he had previously with him in the studio. They trust. They know he's behind the big board. This nothing's going to be second rate if Mike Klink is involved in it. And I guess maybe just like a lot of bands don't know, like I'm a fan of all kinds of bands that they don't know I'm a fan of. I guess the same thing. They must have not. Well, for sure they didn't hate us, or they would, or they would.
No.
Did they like us? Did they love some of our songs? Did they just were they just being nice because we're passing ships, sort of in the concert scene? I'll never know. I just know how grateful I am to all of them.
Um, so Mike, it's funny because I've become friends with Alan Niven, who has a book coming out this month, and obviously the connection with Alan and Mike. And Alan hates everything, and he likes Triumph, so that says something right there. He's I was talking to him a few weeks ago, and he's like, he heard the album, and he's like, yeah, those songs. And he said, truthfully, I forgot about them, but he forgot how incredible they were. Um, because you guys pulled those off live. Like, a lot of people don't know that. My band does Lay It on the Line. Okay, we do it with a female singer. And I'm still going, wow, there's some chops in there that are like, you got to be on your toes to do them not sloppily. And, so that's incredible that you guys were able to pull that off to the degree that you did.
Yeah, we really worked hard on our live show, like not just the performance, but also the sound and the lighting and the effects and everything else. Like we were committed, kind of like a sports team, to trying to bring the real, come in with the game face on and really deliver the goods to the audience. We weren't the type of band that, went on stage drunk and couldn't give a damn. That just was never what Triumph was or would. There was nothing even from the day one of the rehearsal to the last time we played on stage, at game two last week. It's always the same uh, ethic, I'll say, is to try to do our best.
Um, I always like I'm intrigued. I'm a drummer that doesn't sing. I sing backups, but I don't sing lead. And you're not only a singer, but you're an amazing singer. I mean, you had that high register that when I was in high school, if we found a singer that had your range, we'd be like, yeah, it doesn't matter what he looks like, doesn't we'll take him, right? Did you always sing? Because I find drummers that sing have a different way of playing. They're very hard to emulate. Their playing is, and I don't know if it's because you're trying to concentrate on two things, but you just don't have the same vibe. You can play the notes, but you don't have the same vibe.
Yeah, I learned out of desperation. Like the true story is, one of my very early bands, we had a gig coming up at Honey Harbor of all places here in Cottage Country, and our singer quit on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, and we were rehearsing at Willowdale United Church, and the gig was for $100. So I called a buddy of mine in another band, a guy named Joe DiNardo, and I said, "Hey Joe, our singer just quit. We're desperate. Can you teach us how to sing?" So he came over to the rehearsal and he just literally he came up, he put a microphone beside my drum kit, and he goes, "Okay, let me hear your voice." So I grunted a couple of words, and he goes, "Sounds like John Kay. You're going to do all the Steppenwolf." So immediately I became John Kay, and he goes to the next guy, and the same routine with each. And then he just stood beside. He's a really good singer, so he stood beside us, and the first song I started on was "Sookie Sookie." And I just stand, and he put the mic right here. He put his head right beside my ear, and I was playing drums, and he's singing, and he's just saying, "Do it, do it, do what I'm doing, do what I'm doing." That was a great singing lesson, you know. And so I never really liked singing. It was just something that it was a necessity. And through the years, I've said, playing drums and singing is kind of like being a plumber and electrician at the same time. Pretty soon you're going to have your hand on the drain and your hand on 240 volts, and something bad is going to happen. So that's inevitable for singing drummers. However, later on, I met Ed Johnson, who was an opera singer extraordinaire. He's not with us anymore, but he actually made me appreciate singing. And he said, "You know what? You actually have a good voice. I can teach you how to sing." And I said, "Well, it's about time somebody did. I've made 5 records, not knowing what I'm doing." So, he stepped it up, and all of a sudden, he opened the world of bel canto to me, and I went, "Wow, actually, singing is really, it's a cool thing. It's a lot of fun." Like I could have got into this a lot earlier if I knew more about it, but I was drilling in on the drums. I was trying to always, studying drummers and trying to figure out, because there weren't the teaching tools we have now.
Right.
There was no way to really acquire the knowledge other than, going to concerts and watching drummers play or listening to records or doing whatever you could do to, the school of hanging around. That was what it was all about. So singing was always second. But at the end, I enjoyed it after a while.
Well, when you crafted those parts, because I mean, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it. Did you craft it with the vocals in mind or the drums in mind? Because you never seemed to quote unquote miss a beat when you played live, right? I mean, like you were doing fills, and it was just like it was effortless. So did you craft it with the drums or the vocals, or did you just do it and figure it out later?
Figured out later. I mean, yeah, I never had a much of an issue of independence. So I would be able to, either have the vocal on autopilot, or I'd have the drums on autopilot, or some combination thereof. So it just became, I don't know, the voice just became like another hand or another arm just hitting something else. It just, in this case, it's,
Well, because a tune like Allied Forces, everybody knows when you're a singing drummer, the timing can waver, and I've seen you do it live many times, and it wasn't an issue, so that's cool. Um, when they bring up the US Festival, and I mean every American, I even know a couple people that were there. And you guys released the 40th anniversary a while back, and what do you remember about that? Obviously, you guys are Canadians going into a US territory, but what do you remember about that?
well, a couple of things. One, how hot it was. It was like over 100 degrees, so it was absolutely steamy hot. Uh, the scope of the event, like coming in a helicopter and going over it, you felt like you were going over a city, not a concert, on Heavy Metal Sunday, which was that's when they had the biggest crowds. And you realize, like, all the bands that played on Heavy Metal Sunday, they were all headliners in their own right,
Right.
so they could all sell at the arena in Los Angeles. And so it was a massive amount of talent there. And I guess it was of all the festivals that we ever did, I think I've never been on one. Like the day before, we'd played in the Tangerine Bowl in Orlando. It was a 55,000 seater. And that seems fairly big, playing the Texas music festivals. We played them twice. Played the Astrodome. I think it's 80,000, and the Cotton Bowl, I think, is around the same. There's no comparison. Those places are like Joe's Bar compared to the US Festival. I mean, that thing was, as far as the eye could see. You could see, like, from the stage out. Then you could see the front of house, and you could see the delay towers, and then you could see all the way back to the hills behind, and it's just like people you know, and the stage itself was massive. Like, I don't know how big it was, but twice the size of what was needed.
When anybody goes and listens to that, I mean, your performance that day was outstanding. geeky question because somebody's going to ask me to ask you after the fact. So I'm going to do it. Was that your own drum kit that was there, or was that backline that you
Oh,
had?
it was all rental. So
Oh,
that was a big disadvantage going in too, the uncertainty of that. But the thing is, we were so confident.
yeah.
The people asked me about that one. Were you nervous? No, I wasn't really nervous. It's like the only nuisance factor was playing on, not having my own kit there. But, my drum tech was very, very good. People at Tama really looked after me so we could dial in exactly. We want this, 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 this. It's all delivered to the set. And so same equipment. It's just, I don't know, it's a little different when it's not your own, not your own pedals and all that sort of stuff. But I guess just the mind over matter factor in the dressing room. It's like, well, there's no margin for error here. There's no way we're going to screw this up. So we're going out there to win. And that's just that feeling of, so what if it's not my drum kit, or so what if this cymbal is not exactly in the right place, or we're just going to make it work no matter what. And, it was the same thing for Mike and Rick. I mean, they had their hands full with what was going on.
You mentioned when I showed you that picture, you said there's a lot of your drum kits floating around. I kind of had this vision of the Triumph warehouse with all Gil's drum kits and cymbals, and we mentioned the Rocktagons, but I guess a lot of that stuff is just found places elsewhere. Is that a safe
Yeah,
assessment?
we would get Tama would make me a new set every year to just keep changing it up. I changed wood several times, even went to clear shells once. And I've got two kits that I've kept. Although my two daughters, each one of them has half of one kit.
That's fair.
Yeah, and then there's one here at MetalWorks all the time. Um, but the kits, some of them went to charity, some of them were just, sold off after tours with other stuff from our warehouses and stuff, and I don't know where they ended up.
Um, the thing that I always liked about Triumph, and at first, I was like anybody else. Oh, I just want to be a band in a band and whatever. But you guys were a business. You always treated it like a business. Obviously, you did because Metalworks is still here, booming. Um, Obviously, very cognizant of that when you guys get started. Because I heard a story about every piece of equipment you guys had, you kind of purchased it yourself and held on to it, and it was yours. So, you guys were cognizant of it was a business first and a band second. Is that a fair statement?
Uh, no, I would say it was a band first and it was a
Okay.
business second. The you can't really make up what goes on when you jam. And when Mike and I knew what we wanted to do, but we would have failed miserably if we hadn't found Rick. It's just like any band. You take Keith Richards out of the Stones, do you still have the Stones? Or take, Geddy out of Rush. Do you have Rush? It's that kind of thing. You have to get John Lennon, Paul McCartney had to meet in order to write the songs they wrote together.
Right.
And in the case of this, you had Mike and I were both bluesmen, and Rick was from progressive rock, classical influences. So it was an odd group of chefs to put in the kitchen at the same time. So the soup that came out was obviously a little different. And I think that's where we got lucky is we suddenly we had a sound by accident almost just because based on how we grew up playing. And I don't know, I'm answering your question.
No,
What
100%.
the hell was the
Because,
question again?
yeah,
I'm going
well,
off
it's
on a
just you
tangent.
guys treat it like a business, and so few
Oh, the
bands.
business side. Well,
Yeah.
so my dad was a very good businessman, and when I was growing up, I could never balance my checkbook, or I always seemed to be broke, and and he would kind of chuckle and kind of set me straight again for a little while until I messed it up again. And then one day, I started to get interested. I guess you just start to grow up a bit, and I go, Dad, I can't be relying on you to keep me off hitting the guardrails all the time. And I started to, develop an interest in it. And I'd ask him a lot of questions and so on. And I guess it was just this osmosis thing that happened with my dad because uh, he was my best friend, and I really really took it seriously, the things that he talked about. And we, like I said, we didn't go out. We weren't a party band. Like we didn't go out on the road. To I mean, you weren't. and we weren't choir boys either. I mean, we had a good time. We were like a sports team. We had a lot of fun in between games. But when game day was on, we were on because there was only three of us. And if you, I guess until Sport of Kings, we brought a second guitarist and a little bit of keyboards to support us. But for the most part, we were a three-piece band. I just looked at it like there's no place to hide. One guy screws up, the ship sinks immediately. And that was the beauty of a power trio. And that's why when we started, Mike and I were looking at, whether it was Cream or whether it was Jimi Hendrix or whatever, we were looking at those power trio models and going, yeah, man, that's tough. Like I played in four-piece, five-piece bands. Mike even had bands with horns that were like 9, 10 players or
Wow.
whatever. You could take a smoke break and no one would notice. But Triumph was the opposite. Triumph was like all hands on deck every single second. And then when you add in the fact that we played a lot of really pedal to the metal kind of music in many cases. We had some other stuff that was dreamier and reggae beats were in there and stuff, but there was a lot of that. You mentioned Allied Forces as an example. I mean, that thing's a steamroller from the beginning to the very end. Rock and Roll Machine is exactly the same way. So there's a lot of that stuff that just meant that everyone had to be like really drilling down hard all the way through. So that's what we were.
Well, and I get that because there's two instances for me that both get back to work ethic. And I don't expect you to remember this, but you guys played Halifax the first time, and I remember one of you saying, "We've all got the flu," and you guys were up there playing, and the show must go on, no cancellations. The second thing was I remember you doing an interview on Much Music and something about a light falling on your head and the show must go on. And there's not that work ethic today. I don't know why that is, but it's just you don't it's not the same, I guess, sort of thing. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to ask you to talk about the way the music business is now, but do you find that maybe a little bit? There's a different sort of way of dealing with things now.
It's hard to say. It's hard to compare eras. Like, we all got injured at different times. We were all sick at different times. It was really tough when Rick and I were both sick because we were
Yeah.
the singers. That was really difficult. But I mean, the worst thing that ever happened, we were playing in the sports arena in LA, had all the LA press out, had our record label out, 15,000 people in the venue, and I had food poisoning. And I was like holding on to the bed, and the bed was spinning at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's a doctor there trying to get me somehow in some kind of condition to play. And we went and we did it. What made matters worse was I don't know if you remember Westwood One, but they were the biggest radio syndicator. So we had over 100 radio stations across America getting a live feed from the arena. And I'm going on there going, I can barely walk, never mind sing or play drums. And, somehow got through it. But I mean, I'm not trying to make myself sound like a martyr because I know Mike Levine had his bad days and Rick Emmett had his bad days. We all did. But, we just tried to soldier on if there was a problem. Like, can you imagine? Like, I see concerts getting canceled.
Mm.
And I'm kind of like, how do you do that to your fans? Like I saw something about Madonna, some show that she had. She made let everybody wait for an hour and a half or something while she fiddled with her makeup. I mean, it's like, give me a break.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Last question here, my friend. Do some business. Where do I send the folks to get this wonderful record and find out about what you guys have on the go? It's like Triumph is resurgent again. Like you guys are everywhere. It's fantastic after kind of being around but not being around. Where do I send them?
Well, I'm not an expert on that, but I think, probably any of the major places that you would go to purchase music. I mean, you can go to our website, triumphmusic.com. I know that there's links on there. But I would think, any of the usual suspects that are selling CDs or selling vinyl records and Amazon, of course, all the big chain stuff, won't be hard to find.
Um, I got one quick last story. So my introduction to Triumph, I was probably in grade six, and we had a radio station out here called CJCH, and they used to play "Say Goodbye" all the time. And I asked Rick this when I talked to him, and he told me how you guys would do certain songs based upon the marketplace and radio play. But that was my introduction to Triumph, and I was like, well, what album was that on? And when I found out Allied Forces, that's how I get into it. And I wore two of those out. True story. So it's always nice to meet somebody that you grew up listening to, and when they're a cool person, it's even better. So I want to thank you for doing this, my friend.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on, Sean. It was nice chatting with you, and I love Halifax. I like thinking about the East Coast of Canada. It's such a great place.
If you ever get out here, I owe you a donaire.
Well, we may get back out there. You never know. So,
Awesome.
stranger things have happened.
Peace. Thank you, my friend.
All right, man.
We're
Take
back
care.
after this.